Here I am in Dreamweaver. You can use any text editor or web editor for this. Dreamweaver just happens to be the one of my choice. If you've gone through the previous video, you understand how to create a PHP page, the fact that you have to save it as a .php file. So in here, I'm going to go in and I'm going to open a file that I've already created. It has a header, it has the navigation, it has some content, and it has a footer. So it has all of this information. This is just a plain HTML file. If I were to do a file save as, because you can see I've labeled this one as template before, meaning it's template before I've taken stuff out and put in the PHP include. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to go take a preview of what this looks like in the browser. So this is what my page looks like within the browser. Here's my header, here's my navigation, and then here's my content and my footer. We can tell that it's local because of the address that's showing up. It's files, volumes, it tells where it's at on my local computer. So if I wanted to go and create another document, for example, because we have the index and the birds and spring signs, we have some of these different pages. If we were to go and create one of these, so I'm just going to do a file save as, and I am going to call this one my index page. There's my index, and I'm just going to do this because I like the content. That's going to serve as my index. So I'm going to then do a file save as, and I'm going to make this one my birds page. So it'd be like spring birds, right? And so I'm going to change the content down here so that it says birds of spring. And for example, then I could go ahead and I could add an image in here that would have a bird of spring, but we're not going to do that for the sake of this. Just assume that this is the content. So I'm just going to put a little paragraph. Let's see, this would contain pictures of birds in spring. So there's my content. It's between my main and main tags. This is great, but what if I decide, you know what? I want to add some additional menu items. So I have a home page, I have birds, I have flowers. Well, what else do I maybe want to include in this? I maybe want to say gardening or trees. Let's do trees. So I'm just going to copy this and put it at the end. We're just going to put another one, and then I'm going to create my ahref. Don't worry that there isn't an actual page, but we're going to call this trees.php, and we'll add this menu item. Okay, so there's my new menu item. I'm going to save this, and I'm going to go preview this page in my browser. So here it is. Now I have home page, birds, flowers, other signs of spring, and trees. So what happens if I go to my home page? There it is. It shows up. It's just fine, but it says home page, birds, flowers, other signs of spring. What's it missing? If I go back to my birds page, my birds of spring, you'll see we added trees. Well, there isn't a trees page on the home page. That's a problem. So this is why we like to use templates and use includes. So let's go ahead and do that. So I've got everything I want laid out in my HTML file, but now I want to actually pull some stuff out and I want to make each into their own little individual files. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to my template before. I'm going to close out these other files. So I'm going to go into this template before, and in between my header tags, I am going to take the header content. So the header tags are going to stay put, and I am going to cut this because I don't want it in here. So I'm going to cut this, and I'm going to do a file new, and it's fine if you just open it up as an HTML document. I'm actually going to get rid of all of this content because remember, PHP is going to pull this into my other page, and I am going to paste that header content. Then I'm just going to do a file save as, and I'm going to put it into my includes. I'm going to call it header, and I am going to call it PHP because it's just good to get in the habit of calling everything .php from this point forward. So I'm going to save, and because I've been messing around with this, it just asked me if I wanted to replace it. I do. So what do I put in its place? Because at this point it just disappears. this is where my PHP comes into play. So I'm just going to put a little room. So if you remember from the prior video, we open up our PHP by the left-facing angled bracket, the question mark, and the PHP. Then we do a command called include. Put a space after it, and then we do a quotation mark, and this is where we tell where to go to find this include. After the quotation mark, we have to put the actual path on the server path because this is PHP. So I had already copied this from a different document that's in the different exercise where you're going to discover what your server path is. So I'm just going to paste that in there. Just as a really quick recap, it's home because that's kind of the base or the root of the server. Then it's going to look for Stout Martech, which is a folder on there. Public HTML users, there's me. It's in my case, it happens to be in this ICT375 folder. In a folder called PHP template, includes header. Then I'll put a quotation at the end and I'll close my PHP. Now I have to save this as a PHP file. So I'm going to do a file, save as, and this is going to replace my index, which before was index.html. So if I type this in as index and replace this as PHP, it's not going to replace this. So we're going to have to do a little house cleaning. So I'm just going to do save. And it's set and it's ready, and because I moved this from an HTML file to a PHP file, this is all nice and color-coded for us. But remember, I can't test this on my local browser. I'm just going to do that. See, it tells me to preview pages containing server-side code. You need a testing server. Would you like to specify one now? Say no, because it'll take you through a whole bunch of extra steps that you don't really need. Instead, go to your web space. So I'm just going to go into my ICT375, and I have this thing called PHP template, which is where I've been working. And there's that template before that I was experimenting with. And I need to open it up on the other side. And notice there's that index.html. I don't want that file. What I want is my index.php, so I will move that over. And I'm actually going to get rid of these. These were just from some experimenting I did, so we're just going to get rid of those. And I also need my includes. So in this includes, I have the other files that I created, but the only one that we're concerned about right now is header. So I'm going to move my header over into this folder called includes. So I'm in my browser. I navigated out to my site. So you can tell that it's at my site versus a local file because it has my username, .stoutmartech.com, and then the location of where it's at. So we can see that my navigation is here. If I do a right click to view the page source, you will see it renders the HTML. So this is actually how it's been included into this page. And it's done on the server side, so all the end user sees is the HTML that it creates. So let's do this just once more, and let's do this with the navigation, and I'll let you figure out the footer. So let's go back to our Dreamweaver file. I'm still working in this index.php file. And I need to, just like I did with the header, I need to get the stuff that's between the two nav tags out of there. So I am going to cut those out. Cut, not copy. I'm going to create a new document. This time I'm going to select PHP, just so you can see the color coding right away. Just like with the header, just to remind you, there's no other HTML coding in here. So I'm going to get rid of that, and then I'm going to paste in that nav code that I just pulled up. So here it is. I'm going to save that, and this is my nav. I'm going to save it in my includes. I'm going to save this as nav, and because in Dreamweaver, if I open it as a PHP file, it automatically gives me the PHP extension. So I'm going to save it. Just like up here, for my header, I need to do this with my nav. So I'm going to copy that line, and I'm going to bring it down into my navigation. But remember, at the end, this is calling for header. I need to now make it look for my nav.php file. So I'm just going to fix that. Now I'm going to save it. Those are my two files that I need to move over. So let's go back over to to FileZilla, and here's my nav file, so I might as well upload that. So I'm going to move that into the includes folder, and I'm going to go back to my main PHP, and then I need to get this index.php over because we updated the code on that. Now let's go back out to our browser. I'm still out at my DMT275 PHP template, and I'm just going to refresh just because it's good habit. It looks identical, but now this header and the nav bar are coming from the included files. So now if I go do view page source and we'll look again, here is that code that was included. It's not the PHP anymore, so that's the same as with the nav. If we want to make sure these files are here, I know where they're located. They're in my PHP template in a folder called includes, and I can go to nav.php, and there is the individual file. So the thing that started this whole thing is, what if we wanted to change this navigation on every page of our site? Well, first let's go and fix something. So we have this index, but remember we had birds.html? Let's create, I'm just going to do a file save as, and we're going to create a birds.php. So I'm going to save that. And now I'm going to go upload that. So there's, oops, I don't need birds.html anymore. I'm going to delete that. But there's my birds.php. So I'm going to move that over to my web server. And now I'm going to go out to my browser. And after PHP template, I can type in birds.php. And remember, I didn't change any of the content in this one yet. So let's go do that, just so we can see that this is different. So I'm in my birds.php file. I'm going to change my content. I'm going to say birds of spring, and I'm just going to get rid of everything else that's on here. I'm going to save it, re-upload it. Okay, go back out to my browser, refresh. Okay, so now we know we're on the birds of spring. So what if I want to go to my index page? There it is. What if I want to go back to my birds page? There it is. So this is all using the PHP files. Now what happens if I want to add that item again? Remember I wanted to add trees to my navigation? Let's go do that. I'm going to go back to Dreamweaver. I'm going to find my nav.php file. And just like before, I'm going to copy some stuff. So I'm just going to copy this whole thing, and I'll change what I need to. So I have this. I want to change this to trees. Again, don't worry that this file doesn't actually exist. And I'm going to call this trees. So there's my new navigation item. I'm going to save just this. I'm not saving or changing anything with birds or anything with index. But I'm going to go out to FileZilla. I'm going to go into my includes folder, and I'm going to upload nav into my includes folder on my web space. And then I'm going to go out to my browser. So we're still on the birds page. I'm going to refresh. There's trees. What happens if I go to my home page? There's trees. I changed one file, and my navigation is now going to be up to date on every page of my website. This is why we like includes. In some of the other videos you're going to be seeing is we're going to talk about how do you find this path, and how do you create these types of paths for your individual files within particularly your navigation, but possibly other includes that you might use so that they will work regardless of where you navigate to. So like I say, you might have to come and revisit this video again. They're going to work back and forth, and hopefully this helps you understand the idea of includes a little bit better.